I'm Ted Bardicke. I'm the Executive Director of the Clean Power Alliance of Southern California, formerly known as LACE, but we are the latest. It's funny, I was up here as both an operational CCA and as an emerging CCA and soon-to-be CCA. For those of you who don't know much about us, we are a joint powers authority that covers unincorporated LA County, which has 1 million people in it. It would be the 4th largest city in the state if it were a city. Unincorporated Ventura County and 29 cities across those 2 counties. It's about 1 million eligible customer accounts, about 3.5 million people. I live that every day. We started serving municipal accounts in February. We roll on about 30,000 commercial accounts on June 25th, and then we'll bring on the next 950,000 customers over a 6-month period in 2019. And it's really fun, actually, because we have this incredible mixture of cities and counties that decided to join, and it's particularly apropos for this panel coming up because the panel is talking about energy democracy. And you know, if you think about democracy, democracy is messy, and it's fun, it's unpredictable, it's exciting. And particularly here on election day, like, you don't know how it's going to turn out. And, you know, every day I go to work and, you know, in the startup field, you don't know exactly how this is going to turn out. But what's interesting about sort of managing this large organization is that we have, you know, maybe some of your usual suspects. We have Ojai, and we have Malibu, and we have Santa Monica, and Culver City, and West Hollywood, and Manhattan Beach, and we also have like Carson with oil refineries and college campuses and sports arenas, and we have other industrial places like Downey. We have low-income places like Hawaiian Gardens and Paramount and Whittier. And we have folks who are just sort of plain old interested, and we have Democrats and Republicans and decline to state and independents, and you know, our board is like this mixture of sort of diverse opinions, and everybody has a common cause, which is greenhouse gas reduction. You know, even our folks in, you know, Simi Valley is one of our wonderful cities, right? Simi Valley, home of the Ronald Reagan Library, and also, by the way, with more electric vehicles and more customer solar than Santa Monica, right? So when we think about democracy and what can emerge from all of that, it's really unpredictable. And one of the great things about this panel that you're going to hear, these are, you know, 3 people plus a moderator who have emerged from that unpredictableness and creativity and messiness of democracy to propel our energy system forward. And so I'd like to introduce them with that understanding that they're going to talk about where they are and how they're working from the bottom up in these interesting and unpredictable and fun ways to propel our industry forward. Denise Fairchild is the inaugural president of the Emerald Cities Collaborative, a nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C., and they have affiliates around the country. She has an interesting piece about what Emerald Cities does. It talks about the high road, and I'm hoping that Denise will talk about what that high road means, because we all aspire to, you know, no one wants to take the low road, right? Everybody wants to take the high road. And so I think it'd be interesting for Denise to lay out what her organization thinks the high road in the energy world looks like. Jennifer Kropke, who's wonderfully unpredictable. Where is she? There you go. Particularly in her choice of footwear. And I know. So I get to work with Jennifer a lot because she's one of the most passionate stakeholders in and around our organization. And she works for the IBEW Local 11 as the Director of Workforce and Environmental Engagement. Okay, so kudos to IBEW for putting those two things together, right? Think about that. Workforce and environmental engagement. And again, this is an outgrowth of sort of how you build coalitions when you think about effective politics. So we'll hear from Jennifer about why the mixture of those two, I think. And then Amaris Lujano is a solar installation supervisor at Grid Alternatives. And for many of you may know, particularly here in California, about Grid Alternatives. They managed the SASH program, and they have been heavily active in bringing on volunteers and in workforce engagement to install solar on low-income, the homes of low-income folks. But again, the wonderful thing about Grid is like it started with these two people, Tim and Erica in Berkeley in the early 2000s, and they thought they were gonna like install solar in revolutionary Nicaragua. And it kind of worked out a totally different way. And now they're this very large national nonprofit that is really doing good in the world. And Amaris is gonna talk a little bit about what they do and how they do it. So to moderate the panel, Angelina Galitova, sorry. I went Southern Europe instead of Eastern Europe, I apologize. So the governor is on the board of the ISO and works, has worked on a number of things, but particularly close to my heart, she used to work at the LA Department of Water and Power, the nation's largest publicly owned utility. And since I'm trying to run the state's largest CCA, there's a lot of affinity there. So welcome these four lovely women to the stage, and we'll hear about what they're doing. Thank you.
I know.
How about we spread this out? We each take a section.
Where's Amaris? We're looking for her right now. Okay, it might be just just the three of us for a little bit here. But we do have an interesting topic to talk about, and we do have an interesting representation that I like to refer to as power to the people. And renewable energy and energy democracy as a whole is also power to women. Because renewable energy is uniquely positioned to allow everybody, without discriminating as to who you are, to participate in an energy system that has been quite exclusive of communities and of people as a whole. I'm on the board of the California ISO, but I'm also the founder of Renewables 100, Policy Institute, which is an NGO dedicated to the transition to 100% renewable energy in all sectors, not just the electricity sector, but the fuel sector, the building sector, the transportation sector, and making sure that we have a decarbonized economy, which requires the involvement of everybody. And I've been a huge supporter of CCAs and believe that CCAs are a vehicle, and an inherently important vehicle, to be able to bring the community perspective, to be able to take these complex energy programs, break them down, and enable community participation on every level. And not just here in California, but around the world, because we see renewables being the vehicle that empowers people in the Sun Belt or the 2 billion people across the world that have no access to energy, that cannot count on a centralized grid because that takes decades to bring, but can bring microgrids, can bring solar rooftop, can bring information technology, can bring in the distributed fuels that the communities can benefit from on the ground, whether it's geothermal in Kenya or wind power in the Sudan or hydropower in Central Africa, and be able to harness that and create a system that brings everybody in and brings equality and justice much faster than a centralized planned power system. So community energy is kind of the central point that brings in the accomplishment of renewable energy, the ability of renewable energy to empower everybody to participate, whether it's your own rooftop solar, whether it's your community microgrid, whether it's wind from Wyoming coming to California, or California solar going to Wyoming, and make sure that it is accessible to everyone. Everyone has a choice, everyone can participate, and it's no longer a government telling you, this is a one-way grid, you will have the mix that we provide for you, you will take whatever mix we provide for you, you will pay the price that we tell you that you should pay, and you have no say into what that is. To where it's a system of, well, you know, I can have solar on my roof, I can have distributed energy, I can have storage, I can have an electric vehicle, guess what? I can allow it to participate in the grid market, and if I do, I want to be compensated and monetize that asset. So it's a very dynamic, multi-directional system that we saw Governor Farron earlier today talk about the 5 Ds. It's democratized, it's digitized, it's decentralized, it's distributed, and it's decarbonized. And guess what? It's empowering, and it allows women to participate in the energy system and energy solutions like we've never been able to before. And actually, if you look at the CCA and CCA leadership, it's an example of power to women as well. So women, let's hear it for all the women. This is a women's battle after all. Energy and power to us, and may we continue to be able to bring the perspective that is a 50% of this community as to why we need to be able to bring everybody and be all-inclusive in the solutions for our society, for our climate, for our energy, and for our services that we can be in control of, and we don't have to necessarily have someone up there tell us what should be happening, but this is a grassroots movement that allows a much more democratic approach to the solutions for not just energy, but climate for our future. So we've got a distinguished panel here, and Denise commutes between Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles, and you're on the forefront of making sure that we've got a situation and an ability to green our cities, keeping environmental justice and keeping resiliency in mind. Because a distributed system doesn't mean that it's a less resilient system. A distributed system can, in fact, be a much more resilient system. So how are you working on that? What does energy democracy mean to you, and what drives you every day?
Well, thank you for that introduction. And I guess what drives me is my background, and it is not in energy, right? It is in economic, racial, and social justice. And so what I see when we talk about energy democracy, first, what is energy democracy? It's a number of things. First of all, it's an emerging movement. It's a movement of particularly frontline communities, low-income communities of color, who are actually taking their energy future into their own hands. They're not looking to professionals, they're not looking to government, but they are recognizing how energy is impacting their day-to-day lives, how it's impacting their health, how it's impacting their pocketbooks, and they're fundamentally deciding they're not in the picture, and they're positioning themselves to be in control and in that. So this is a movement. It's a movement where you are, wherever you are. In fact, so energy democracy is not only a movement, but it is a book.
Yeah.
All right. Shameless advertising. That is available for sale in the back with my colleague Al Weinrub. That really tells the story, and it doesn't matter whether it's in rural Mississippi or the Asian Pacific Environmental Network right here in this region, or whether it's suburban moms or high school kids in the Northeast. Folks are wanting to have their voices heard and to have decisions made that reflect their particular needs. So it's both a movement, it's a book, but more importantly, it's a framework. It's a framework for understanding what kind of clean energy future we're creating. And most of the folks that are in this conversation are looking at intersectionality. They're looking at the intersection of energy at the nexus of the environment, the economy, and equity, and how we make solutions. And as community choice advocates and practitioners in this room, whether you're looking at solutions that understand that intersectionality. And I submit to you that you are not going to understand this without having communities at the table in the decision-making process and being engaged in a two-way, as you were saying, in engagement around what this new revolution, energy revolution, is going to look like. So what drives me, and I think what should drive everyone here, is that we have a chance not only to create cheaper, cleaner, healthier energy, but we really have an opportunity to re-examine, rethink, re-engineer how we live in society, right? How we look at ourselves and our relationship to the environment, and whether we continue to extract and exploit the environment, or whether we respect it and align ourselves with it, how we relate to capital and the economy, and whether we continue to use energy to make profits for stakeholders or community interests, and how we relate to our civic society. The whole idea of distributive energy, really, the whole notion of localizing our energy infrastructure really gives us a chance, gives you a chance as CCA, community choice advocates, to create community in a way that we've never had before in the last 100 years, but we will now with you in the leadership of creating real community through decentralized energy infrastructure, community-owned, community-controlled. So that's a little bit of what drives me every day.
Well, that's a lot. Well said. And we need to create that community. We need to create that feeling of engagement, because all of a sudden energy is not just the basic need, it's a basic human right. We need energy like we need water, like we need air, and energy impacts all of aspects of society. It impacts your water because it can pollute the water. It impacts your air because it has a direct influence on your air quality, both through the generation and through the transportation sector.
But see, these are just not technological solutions, right? And so the solutions need to be, what does energy have to do with income inequality, right? What does energy have to do with health inequities? Right? And if we're not asking these questions in our business planning, then we're just recreating, reproducing a system that has not served us well.
Right, and all the way down to the individual customer, down to the individual neighborhood. Because what is environmental justice? It is that community that is adversely impacted by where you're siting power plants or where you're having an adverse impact. The environmental externalities we need to account for. The healthcare costs that are somehow shifted away from the true energy costs. So all of that is really important, and all of us should be looking at it from every side to make sure that it's handled, and it's no longer just one bottom line, which is your economic bottom line. It's not a double bottom line, which is economy and the environment, but it's a triple bottom line, economy, environment, and environmental justice that we need to be accounting for and making sure that it can participate. Thank you for joining us, Amaris. And it's, next speaker that we have looks at it from a different perspective as well. My dear friend Jennifer Kropke, who is a lawyer, and she's a reformed lawyer. I can say that because I'm an attorney as well.
I'm recovering. I'm recovering.
Yes, she had a very successful career representing children and families, and transitioned to what represents children and families and the community on an even wider basis, which is becoming the Director of Workforce and Environmental Engagement for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 11. Because as we build this new energy future, we need to be thinking about the jobs of the future. We need to be thinking about what are our young people going to be devoted to, and what is the employment landscape going to be looking like into the future. So Jennifer, I know you're passionate. Everybody knows that you're passionate about this. What does energy democracy mean for you? What drives you?
Well, I actually brought a little presentation.
Okay.
Because I attempt to be organized like that, and some days I'm better than others. So I will do my best to make sure that this post-lunch, post-sugar rush that some of you might be feeling, that I'm feeling after having some of those fabulous cookies, will be worth your while. But I would be remiss if I did not first acknowledge the leadership of Anne and Barry and Woody in putting all of this together and assembling this incredible cadre of talented people and this amazing conference. So first I want to acknowledge and say thank you so much for allowing us to be educated, for allowing us to have a space to share and dialogue. So thank you for that. I'm gonna just move this here since I have my own little fabulous mic. So I work for IBEW Local 11, and Angelina is correct. I did have a law practice based on civil rights prior to this, and part of what I love about my job working at IBEW Local 11 is I'm really able to aggressively pursue this conversation of what we are calling democratizing energy. So when we talk about that, we talk about it from the context of a dialogue where we're promoting climate solutions, where we're promoting local control, where maybe we are elevating local control and putting local priorities over shareholder priorities. We also see that energy is not unlike water. It is a basic necessity. We need it for everything. We need it for bathing, we need it for cooking, we need it for cleaning. It's one of those things like water where we feel might be best left to decision makers who have local thought in mind about what's important for the different energy sources, not only where we're getting them, how we're creating them, and what is the workforce involved in them. So I come at it from a little bit of a different perspective. So you may or may not know, I work for IBEW Local 11. So we are the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. We're 12,500 men and women working in and around Los Angeles County. And we are interested in creating renewable energy careers. We have this dialogue often in this space of this intersectionality, and I love that word and that concept and everything it brings, of environmental and workforce. And I feel for too long there have been these discussions that have really attempted to pit all of us against each other. This concept that you can't be an environmentalist and also be interested in labor. And I am here to tell you it is not accurate. And part of the reason why is because we see solar and we see renewable energy as one of those concepts that is mission critical. And the reason why is because we live in the same communities that all of you do. We see the same air impacts that all of you do. And we're concerned about what the implications are for future generations, like I know all of you are. So our mandate and part of what I do in my position is recognizing the importance of a renewable energy career, not a job, a career that will respect workers, that will pay a wage that is what we call family sustaining, and that will respect the role of the worker in this space. We see that solar is going to add much needed capacity to the electric grid. But in the longer term, the expansion of distributed energy resources is going to require upgrades to our electrical infrastructure in the form of batteries, in the form of smart sensors, in the form of some of these technologies we've already heard about, and all of those things that we need to manage our electric grid. You may or may not know that Ted and I are from the city that has more solar than any city in the country. Why that's exciting to me is because we've installed it, IBEW, along with some of our other trade brothers and sisters. So the 2.21 megawatt solar installation that's on the LA Convention Center, that's IBEW. The Westmont project at the Port of LA, the 16.4 megawatts, which is enough energy for over 5,000 homes because it has 50,000 photovoltaic panels atop a cluster of distribution warehouses, that's IBEW. So we are seeking to be a part of this new renewable energy arena from the workforce perspective of, we see CCAs as a vehicle. And it's an important vehicle that we see can drive a lot of solutions that we're all looking for. Climate solutions, local control solutions, workforce development solutions. And part of what's been hugely exciting is you have CCAs like Marin Clean Energy that have acknowledged and said, workers are important. We're gonna get you in here with pre-apprenticeship programs, we're gonna do local hire programs, and we're gonna make sure that our developers and people are out here hiring union all the time, because we think it's important that people who are in renewable energy have a career and not a job, if that makes sense. We are interested in providing renewable energy careers. We think renewable energy jobs are great as a segue, but we are interested in developing the skilled workforce that will continue to put in all of these wonderful, amazing renewable energy and DER installations that are really going to help add value to our grid. So one of the things that I do need to add is, and I think I left my phone there, I'm gonna take a cue from the Surgeon General because today's my actual birthday, and my kids were asking me where I was for my birthday. And I was able to tell them that I have 3 kids, they're 11, 8, and 5, and I was able to tell them that mommy is in an entire room of people who share mommy's values, who are interested in the same thing as mommy, who want to see our air quality improve, who are interested in having labor involved in the picture. So I'm actually going to take a selfie, if that's okay with all of you. Would that be okay?
I can take a picture.
Okay, no, it's got to be a selfie. I'm going to do the Surgeon General thing because it's actually really funny, okay? So I want to see everybody looking fabulously happy so that I can send this to my kids.
After all, that's who we're all working for, right? They're the future.
Okay, I'm going to get everybody here in the background. If we're ready. Ready?
Yeah.
Yay! Well,
Okay.
on a serious note. But on a serious note, you know, one of the other things that I did want to acknowledge also before I relinquish the mic is the role of women in energy, the role of organizations like this where they really allow a diversity of viewpoints, where they really allow and acknowledge the contribution of many different people who play a very, very important role in this renewable energy space. And we are so happy to be here. We want to continue to build this. We want to continue to be your skilled workforce, and we want to continue to be involved in this really important dialogue about democratizing energy, making it available to all of us, having more control over it, having it be a vehicle for our local businesses, for our local workforces, and all of those things that we all value so much. So thank you very much for including me.
Thank you, Jennifer. And continuing with the narrative of this is an important opportunity for jobs. This is an important opportunity for women. This is an important opportunity for all ethnic backgrounds, for all income levels, and for immigrants. I am an immigrant myself as well, where we all have access and where we all have a place and an opportunity to excel in an area that is not just a job, but it's something that we love. And work can be fun, and it's something that you love, then it's wonderful, and everything comes together, and the sky's the limit. And I think Amaris Lucano actually exemplifies a lot of that as well, because she does work with Grid Alternatives, which is a fabulous organization that showcases how solar is not just for the rich and for the wealthy and for the West Sides, it's for everybody, and it's for lower income, and it should be accessible, and it should allow for jobs. And she's not only the solar installation supervisor, she's probably going to be too shy to tell you that she's a graduate of Future Build, which is a pre-apprentice program. And she is one of only 2 women to graduate that program, and she was the valedictorian of her class. And this has enabled her to grow and thrive, and now pursuing a career in electrical engineering and a degree in electrical engineering. So go, Amaris, and tell us why you do this and why this is so exciting.
I do it for, first and foremost, I have a 11-year-old son who has asthma. And I know there are very many children all across the Bay Area and in other areas of California that suffer from the same illnesses, and if not worse. And I feel like contributing to minimizing the carbon footprint and making sure that we have clean energy and building that towards our future, our children, and bringing it to a level to where they can learn and understand the importance of clean energy. That's what I do it for. I do it, and even when I'm not at work, I love talking about what I do, because it doesn't just impact the children, but it impacts the people who take care of our children. And I think that's important too, so that we can all live long and healthy lives to be there and watch them grow and watch them do wonderful things, and hopefully, clean energy in every aspect of it.
Right. And energy democracy and renewable energy allows for that to happen. And again, the environmental justice issue. I remember when Ted mentioned LADWP, when we were rolling out the Green Power for a Green LA program, one of the rationales was going into inner city schools, and along with taking out the pencil boxes, most of the kids took out their asthma inhalers and placed them on their desks. I mean, it's a devastating situation, and it is an environmental impact due to energy and pollution from cars as well, which is why this transition that we are all engaged in, and this climate concern, is not just electricity related, although electricity can be the fundamental solution or the fundamental problem. It's also electric vehicle related. It's the fuels that drive our everyday lives that are important as well. So this is a CCA conference, and CCA is essentially and fundamentally power to the people, democratizing the grid and making sure that our communities' values are reflected in the energy purchases and the fuel choices that we make.
Yeah, which is one of the concerns I have, because on the one hand, CCA's Community Choice provides a vehicle for energy democracy. It's a platform to achieve, I think, the gold or platinum standard of energy democracy, where racial and social justice are actually embedded and prioritized in terms of solutions. I'm not sure that everyone has sort of really looked at, well, what does it take to do that, right? What are the processes that you have to ensure that community voices are at the table, and the community advisory committees that are needed to be in panel, to be a part of the discovery process? Because I think it's mutual learning on our side, because we're inventing a whole new energy future, and I think we need to learn from folks that are living and impacted by a dirty energy future as we are growing into bringing new technologies and new financing and new structures into play. But listening, I mean, when I look around just at this room, I'm wondering, where are communities of color? Where are we, even in this room, to be present and focused on what does community choice mean and how has it been playing out in our community? Are you in this room, organizing an advisory committee that has real voice and engagement around these conversations? And I just also want to take to one level, because if we're just creating jobs to not change an economy that has been extractive, an economy that's fundamentally overproducing, creating mass production, mass consumption, massive waste. We use 25% of the biodiversity in the world, even though we represent 5% of the population. If we don't begin to understand the existential space that we're in right now, the existential crisis that we're facing right now, and use this opportunity to talk about a new energy future to fix that, right? Then, as well as the economic and social inequities, then I think we're sort of just using a word, a concept, energy democracy, without meaning. And we've got to put real meaning, real substance, real structures behind bringing communities, frontline communities, into this conversation and into this conference room.
Wow, Denise for president. But it's true. It's like think globally, act locally, in action.
But I think that's also a really critical aspect, and part of the reason why is because we get in this space where we talk about CCAs and we compare them to our IOUs, and I think that's kind of the initial thought process. But what I love about the concept of CCAs is you can do so much more because you're not bound by your shareholders. you're not bound by your shareholders. You don't have that obligation to return profits to your shareholders. And so it creates this really interesting space where the CCA leadership can really see, what do we want to do with the excess money that we have? Are we going to reinvest it back into our community? You have great CCAs like Lancaster that are taking their money, reinvesting it, and doing sustainable infrastructural upgrades for their community. CCAs really provide that opportunity in terms of those aspects, the electric vehicle charging, street lighting, all of those things, to really go beyond what we think of as our concept of a utility, and really thinking of it as this opportunity for communities, opportunities for bettering the communities, not just with the price.
I like your idea of local control, and I'm surprised IBEW is interested in that notion of local control. How do you think about that?
Well, I can speak for IBEW Local 11, and part of what we've been engaged with for the last 2 years was down in Southern California, really becoming involved with stakeholders and really having this dialogue of, we understand what our investor-owned utilities are doing. Is there a different model for our members who live and work in these communities? And we really see the distributed energy resources. We see that incoming infrastructural build-out as a really great opportunity to clean the air, first and foremost, and then also provide opportunities for our members. So we've been engaged in the stakeholder dialogue process for several years now down in LA County, and we are excited about Clean Power Alliance and all the different possibilities that that is going to create. But we see it as a vehicle for so many things, not just the typical IOU, but also what can it bring back to the community? How can the community engage? What are the different opportunities for business owners? What are the different opportunities for workforce development? All of those great aspects.
Right, and we're seeing the energy systems change, and we're seeing the CCAs being positioned to take those energy systems, and I wanted to ask this panel, starting with Amaris. The energy system is no longer straightforward, like you said, with a utility basically responsible for electricity, buying and selling kilowatt hours, and sending you a bill. The energy system is changing to where now electricity is becoming a fundamental vehicle to bring in the electrification of the transportation sector, the electrification of the building sector, the connection between our well-being as a community and a microgrid, and resiliency improving as a result of utilizing distributed resources. And so solving the energy issue is no longer compartmentalized, but it has to be across silos. We're breaking down the silos to where electricity now is reaching areas that it wasn't traditionally being looked at having to solve as an issue anymore. And CCAs are very nimble, they're new. Yes, Woody, where are you? They are babies, but they're genius babies with the ability to do a lot. And we're expecting that to happen and happen very fast. So I wanted to start with you. How do you see those silos, the CCAs, grid alternatives, and kind of the non-conventional systems that are starting to come up, being able to break down barriers that existed before and facilitate a transition that will result in the global development of a better environment for all of us that Denise pointed out?
I think it breaks down barriers because, for example, with GRID, we work close with the communities, and we start with we break it down from a centralized level to a stabilized level, right? And we get one-on-one with the homeowners, we get one-on-one with the rest of the community that wants to come out and volunteer, and the more they come out and volunteer, the more they learn, the more they understand how much they're impacting their community, and then little by little that grows on a larger scale. And when you put something tangible in their hands and you teach them on an everyday basis, they want to volunteer more, and they want to try to help more in other communities. And I think spreading that word, so to speak, or spreading the education and integrating it into our kids' schools is what's going to help bring it up on a larger scale.
Right, and then that can be the platform to integrate other technologies, whether it's an electric vehicle or a battery or artificial intelligence or anything else.
Yeah.
So Denise, how does that dovetail into resilient communities, green cities? You've got a national initiative that's being translated here in California, but how does it resonate across the board?
Well, first of all, let me just back up in terms of the silo busting frame, and I think that's absolutely right. And for us at Emerald Cities Collaborative, I mean, our silo busting starts in the boardroom and in our local coalitions where we have labor, business, community, environmental groups battling it out, swinging it out. It was in an earlier session, which says sometimes these conversations are not easy, sometimes they actually are pretty bloody, but you get better decisions and you get better outcomes when you have that kind of engagement. And it is across sectors. And one of the things that we're doing even in the East Bay here is just imagine how a local energy grid can support a local sustainable food movement, right? Or how it can really support a decentralized water management systems, or just reimagine communities in a way that is that's integrated, that is really moving everything, like the transportation and telecommunication infrastructure. It's a way, I'm an urban planner, so I'm understanding this as a way to be able to plan resilient, healthy communities in ways that we've been pining for in our communities for at least 50, if not 60 or more years. So it's the revolution that I'm looking for, and the sort of the charge that I'm giving everyone in this room is to take the good technologies and the financing and the goodwill and really create better, resilient communities that go across sectors, class, race, and industries.
Right.
You know, it's interesting because I see it's so I love panels like this, by the way. So as you were talking, it was like one of those Matrix moments, where you don't see the hallway anymore, you just see the codes coming down on the wall, for any of those who have seen the Matrix movie. But when you were talking about that, I was thinking it was so intriguing because I see it so much as a workforce development aspect. I see it so much as the opportunity to provide careers for people in our communities, for those of us in our communities who decide they don't want to go to college, but they do want to have a career, they do want to be productive, they do want to be able to support themselves. And this solar energy space is that opportunity. This renewable energy career space is that opportunity to come up through an apprenticeship program where you're coming out and you're making wages that you can live on. So
no, it's absolutely right.
It is that aspect, but it's also this aspect of there's an unbelievable amount of work that needs to be done by skilled labor, because all of this DER is going to be tied into the grid. And that has safety, that has fire, all kinds of implications. So there's such an opportunity for labor in that discussion of renewable energy, and renewable energy providing these great careers for people who come up through the skilled trades.
And this is a very important point, and I wish we had more time, but we are out of time, so we have to wrap up the panel. But this is why we need to have the unexpected players. We need to have the grid alternatives coming in and saying, we're ready to work and build the energy future and ready to work with the CCAs. We need the Emerald Cities and the initiative saying cities can be resilient and cities can provide environmental justice. We need labor to come in and say, we are the careers of the future. We will build the new green space and the new green technologies. We welcome it. And guess what? You may not expect us, but you'll see us advocating for electric vehicle and the electrification of the 710 corridor. You'll see us advocating for environmental justice. We all live and work in that space. And you want to see people like the grid operators or the thinkers that have to manage the overall grid saying, hey, 100% is the floor. It's not the ceiling. We're moving beyond that. And I was so happy to hear Jeff Cypher say it. I was happy to hear Don Weiss say it. I'm like, my NGO is obsolete. Now I need to be saying 100% in all sectors. So we're transitioning to that space, and the grid operators should be like the freeways of the future. Everybody is welcome as long as you're a good grid citizen, as long as you participate by the rules of the road. We're going to be able to empower everybody to not only participate in the markets, but benefit from those markets. So together we can make it happen. And this is the 5th largest economy on the face of this earth. And we're breaking barriers every day, 50% and 60% renewable energy on the grid. On February 19th, we were at 80% renewable energy on the grid. So California is doing well, and renewable energy can be a beacon for economic development, for environmental justice, for empowerment of women and everybody, and for the success of CCAs, because we don't want you to be babies. We want you to grow up to be unruly teenagers and then responsible adults. So thank you very much for having us here. This was a pleasure.